Is 6:30, call the meeting to order. So this is Monday, September the 12th, 6:30 p.m. And this is the meeting of the Committee of the Whole, Administration and Finance for the month of September. And so that call to order will move to item number 2 on the agenda, which is approval of the agenda. I have a motion to approve the agenda as circulated. I have Councillor Cameron moving and Councillor Hunter seconding. Vote to call the question. Those in favor? Motion is carried. So it's as circulated. And item number 3 on the agenda is disclosure of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof. Are there any disclosures here this evening? Okay, the chair notes no disclosures and the minutes will so reflect. And now I'm moving on to item number 4, which is business arising from the previous Committee of the Whole meeting minutes. And that was the joint meeting where we combined administration, finance and public works, environmental services, facilities on Monday, August the 8th. So those meeting minutes were circulated in the package. Is there any business arising? I think Councillor Cameron gave me a kind of a heads up.
Yes, I do, Mr. Mayor, thank you. It's just a query, more than anything, through you to either, CAO or the clerk. It regards in the minutes, page 3-7B regarding the names of the committee, the compliance audit committee, compared to tonight's package, page 68. There are different names or more, I should say more names. Was that just a late entry of those names to be approved tonight, or was there a change in structure on the number of people?
So I'll refer the question to the clerk.
Through the chair, you refer to the report under 7C this evening. It notes that we did have a couple of individuals that were disqualified after the county clerk had sent the report to myself. So we had to go back out to advertising to recruit additional members. So it is a combination of members that were listed under the August report, and in the new report under C, it has a combination of them plus new members.
Thank you. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, and I believe the report that you're referring to indicated that the disqualified members, and when they did the due diligence, ended up being members of other boards or committees or something. Okay, does that answer that question? Business arising? Councillor Hunter, you had business arising?
Well, I got to bring up on your inquiry, seeing this finance, I guess I bring it up under here on page 5H, where we were talking about the drainage project in Spencerville and update change orders and stuff involved in it. I noticed on the weekend that we're getting pretty well completed on it, but the one change order that was going to be done in front of the Barnard residents on the street there, I think that ditch is still wide open there. I wondered if they're to the CEO what the timeline is on getting that filled in and done. Looks like they're moving along the rest of it pretty fast. So
Now, is that Barnard down the far end?
yeah,
Okay, so to the CEO.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't have an exact timeline, but I do anticipate within the next couple of weeks, that should be pretty much wrapped up.
I'm not going to have it done before they start paving.
Well, I anticipate they will. They won't be paving this week, from my understanding. That paving is next the following week. What was the last update that I received?
So we'd have that finished before they.
I'm not sure of the exact status at that location.
I know they're just in bar in the weekend, but he told them it was going to be fixed that part, and it still wasn't fixed, and everything else was moving on pretty quick on the fair day. Everybody was pretty happy that I talked to in the streets that they're getting them leveled up as good as they could. for traffic to get around, but down there, it's still a little narrow road going down and a deep ditch there where they're turning in by, so. Just hoping it can get cleared up fairly quickly, so.
Okay, and on that same, page, that same issue, did the problem, or I'm gonna say the issue, at the corner of, I think it's called Cedar Street and County Road 21, did that finally get resolved today, do you know?
Through the chair, I would say it's well on its way to resolution. The curbing has been adjusted, so there are a few other little items that need to get resolved, but I would say all in all that item has been reasonably resolved.
Okay, thank you. Is there any other business arising from this set of minutes? Okay, if not, then I'm going to move on. And that would mean moving on to item number 5, which is delegations and presentations. We have none this evening. And so that gets me to item number 6, which is discussion items. And the first discussion item is the 6A, which is the proposed federal electoral boundaries issue, or I guess we'd call it an issue. And so I asked the CAO to include a bit of correspondence that we had received. And the first is on page 8 of 111 is from the Boundary Commission over the signature or under the signature or under the decal of the House of Commons. So this is basically the report of the Federal Electoral Boundaries Commission. Now, the gist of the report, as you can see, is that the township of Elizabethtown Kittley was to be basically split in half, Elizabethtown and Kittley, with Elizabethtown staying in the existing riding and Kittley going to the new riding to the north. And then the township of Rideau Lakes going to the new riding to the north. And then another sort of issue is that, and you'll see that in item number G, part of the township of South Frontenac, lying southerly of the southerly limit of the Bedford geographic township, would come into this riding. So that is basically what the Boundary Commission was proposing. Then the next item is the item on page 10 of 11, which was circulated to all the mayors of the United Counties by the MP Michael Barrett. And you've all had an opportunity to read MP Barrett's letter, and he takes umbrage, of course, at this proposal, and it asked each of the mayors to respond to him, which I did, and my response is there as well. And so one of the main reasons for putting this on the agenda was to make the public aware of these proposed boundary changes. Now, the other reason I wanted on the agenda was to get some discussion from the members of the of council to see which, well, just to see where you're standing, because I'm quite prepared to make the pitch to the Boundaries Commission as the mayor, but it's one thing to make it as the mayor, and it's another thing to make it as the mayor on behalf of council. So I just need to know whether or not there's going to be council support of the position that MP Barrett is taking. So Councillor Cameron.
Well, Mr. Mayor, I'd just like to draw to your attention that the first item that you talked about was from the commission, which we did not get in this package.
Do you not have page 8 of
I
111?
have page 8, but that's a letter from Mr. Barrett.
Oh, that's funny,
Okay.
because on my package, the letter from Mr. Barrett is 10 of 111.
No, Mr. 10 of 111 is your letter to Mr. Barrett.
Both.
Well, yes, okay, correct. But my real question is, without seeing a map of of these new boundaries, I'm gonna find it very difficult to decide where to actually pinpoint these boundaries.
Okay, now, let me just ask this question then, because in my mailbox at the Cardinal Post Office, I had a circulation from the Boundaries Commission. And it was, I didn't bring it tonight, it was quite a substantial document. Did that not appear in everybody's mailbox?
Well, I must say, I didn't go to the post office today.
No, this is over a week ago.
No, I have not seen.
Oh, did anybody
I
else
haven't
see it?
seen that.
I've seen it, but not through my mailbox. But if I can Google it, I want to say.
Oh, that's interesting, because I thought it was circulated to all residents of the electoral district.
Well, does it affect the township of Edwardsburg Cardinal in any way, shape, or form?
Well, it does in several different ways, which I'll explain in a minute. We stay in the larger context of the riding. The new riding, by the way, will be called Gananoque, Brockville, Prescott. And so the name Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands, Rita Lake will disappear. And this new name will appear, Gananoque, Brockville, Prescott will be in that riding. Now, how does it affect us? And we had a long discussion about this at the United Counties Committee of the Whole meeting on Wednesday. Here's the big effect. When we sit around the council table as 13 and joint services committee meetings, there are 13 mayors involved. And we deal with a lot of issues that are federally embedded and a lot of issues that are provincially embedded, which requires that we have a working relationship with our MP and our MPP. Now, if this proposal was to go through, the first thing that would happen is that the 13 mayors would then have to have relationship with 2 MPs and 2 MPPs, which is a difficult thing to achieve at the best. The other thing that's worrying us is that the province will decide to align the provincial electoral boundaries with the federal electoral boundaries as they are at the present time. And that will cause United Counties to be basically in some ways, or possibility that in some ways United Counties will end up being split apart as an administrative unit. So, I mean, there's a lot of unknowns here that sort of involve all of us in one way, shape, or form. So other comments, Councilor Hunter?
Well, I can see there can be some difficulties in it, but I also see there can advantages in it for Legion Grenville too. Right now, we have one voice. You got an MP or we got an MPP when it goes. If we're dealing with 2, if you can get relationship for 2 and you sell it, then you got 2 members of parliament that's going there that's fighting for you instead of just one, because it's affecting both of them.
Good counter argument.
So,
Yeah.
and I
Let's
don't know
assume they're both on the same side of the house.
well, even if they're not
Yeah.
on the same side of the house, and maybe even better if they're not both on the same side of the house, because then you got push it both sides. But I see the difference, like it's a historical thing, but it was changed years ago. It was changed at one point we're farther east than we were west, so it's all, I think it's all, if I'm not wrong, I think it's all the ones that set it up, it's all due to populations, try to make the equal population, so it's,
Right.
I don't know how you get around that unless they're gonna
Well,
change something, so.
okay, so I'll just speak to that just for a minute, because the counter proposal that I think will be coming forward from counties. Matter of fact, I'm confident will be coming forward from counties because that was the essence and the result of the discussion. They need to have X numbers of 1,000 people in each electoral riding. So the counter proposal is leave our riding as it is and add the separated town of Smith Falls to our riding. The separated town of Smith Falls is not really an integral part of Lanark riding, Lanark County. It's separated the same as Brockville, Prescott, and Gananoque are from our county. So it would not cause any disruption of community of interest to add Smith Falls and the population of Smith Falls to our riding, which would bring us up to the number that they need to get in each electoral district. So that's the part, that's the counter proposal. And one of the strong talking points that we intend to make is that Elizabethtown Kitley just went through in the year 2000 an amalgamation of Elizabethtown and Kitley. And as the mayor says, they've been working for 20-some years to try to heal that, bring that together. Now this tears it apart. Yeah.
It's crazy.
Other comments? Not hearing any other comments,
Well,
so
I certainly support, whatever you're putting forward. I support your letter as you wrote it. I see no reason our 13 municipalities or our 10 municipalities and 3 cities work fine just the way they are. Further separating them and causing more, I don't know, I guess it's pretty congruent between MP, MPP and 13, 10, 3, whatever you want to call it. I think that those it makes a lot of sense. It works really well the way that it does now, and changing that up for us, I don't see how it makes any sense.
thank you very much. Appreciate that. Other comments?
I concur with the last statement.
The other point that I'll add, Mr. Mayor, as well is, and it is based on population, but I think from what I've seen that, or at least the argument is for population, but I don't really see where the population numbers are all that different. From everything that I've heard is that the numbers in our area will end up being relatively almost exactly as they were before they did it. So again, I'm at a little bit of a loss.
Yeah, I'm at a total loss, actually, yeah. Okay, now, one thing I think I can do is I can find that thing that was circulated in the mail, and I'll just make it available to the clerk, and if anybody wants to have a look at it, we can have a look at it.
I sent the redistricting map to the clerk while we were having a discussion. I just Googled it quick and sent it through. So she should have it there, and then should be able to email it out to everyone.
Okay, thank you. Okay, no further discussion. I'm gonna move on. Go ahead.
Do you need a motion to do a support on behalf of council? Because I'm happy to move something if you need something.
Well, again,
I'm fine with however you want to do it, but I certainly.
well,
support
let me
however
put it
it's
this
done.
way, a motion of support for this letter, then I can say that I'm speaking on behalf of the council, not just I'm speaking on my own book. I can put it that way.
From my perspective, I would prefer that it came from council. I think your letter's done well as the mayor, but I think if it gets more clout as a full council, I'd rather that.
Okay, then can we have the appearances before the commission will not be until October, so can we have the clerk bring back a letter of endorsement for this position for the council meeting?
Through the chair, I can create the resolution.
Be satisfactory. 100%. Okay. All right, so then I'm gonna move on. And the next item again is information item, so that all members of council are aware of it, because everybody knows that Hyndon Bridge is in our township, is south of the little, the 4 corners there. And as I'm assuming that you've all had an opportunity to read pages 12, 13, and 14, which is the sort of synopsis of where we are. I think we were all at the United Counties table quite surprised to find that this bridge required this amount of maintenance at this period of time. And you can see the 3 options that the engineers came up with, and you can see the option that our public works staff, county public works staff has chosen, which is alternative A, which is to strengthen the bridge superstructure at a cost of $900,000. And I think, unless I missed my guess, this report was for information only at the United Counties Committee of the Whole, but the recommendation will come at the committee, at the council meeting on, I think it's the 21st of September. So are there any questions that I can answer about this particular job that's going to be occurring? If not, then just treat it as information. And you've got the technical report If you're interested in it, ask the staff, our staff will put the full report in just so you have it. And if there's no questions, then I'm gonna move on to item number C, which is the Newport Drain, the United Counties of Leeds and Grenville Storm Sewer Replacement on County Road 2. You all know where that is. It's underneath our rail bridge. And everybody is aware of the big bump that you had as you go underneath or as you go down that hill. So at long last, this contract is now being awarded. And I think you can see the cost there, $1,620,000 plus $950,000. And if there's any questions with this, I'm prepared to answer them, but again, it's more to get the public aware of the fact that this will be happening this fall. So questions, if any, if not, I'm just gonna move right on. Okay, moving on.
One quick question,
Yeah.
when we did the work ourselves on the cement for the bridge, there had to be a pretty detour, like for the detour.
Yep.
Is that going to be in place again for possible road closures for
Yeah.
401 and 2?
Yeah, and those detour routes, those alternate detour routes are shown on 27, 28, I think 29,
So back
I
the way
think
it was.
30. And one of the benefits of this project, if I can put it that way, is when the Port of Johnstown did the bridge, we were expecting that this project would occur the next year and that the same detour route could be used. So the Port of Johnstown had to pay, I'm gonna say, X numbers of dollars for all the signage that was required. And if you recall, we invoiced the counties for half and said to them, you're gonna be using the same signage next year, so pay us half. And I think they did, but then it's been 4 years since, and I don't think they're gonna get I don't think they're gonna get full advantage of the signage.
Good memory, I forgot all about that.
Yeah, I think maybe somebody put signs in there to go.
Well, yeah, I don't know. Hopefully, it's the same company. Any other questions with regard to that project?
I have one, Mr. Mayor, and that is the alternative. Is there any way that we can make sure they don't go down Cedar Grove on that route when they're closed? I wonder, with the counties
Well,
or with us putting
well,
some kind of roadblock or something up there, or
well, as you can see from the maps, the counties is trying to keep the detours all on county roads.
I realize that. It's the same with an accident going, you know how they're supposed to go up 16 and then out 21 and
Yep,
back to 18. And the first thing they do, they hit Cedar Grove.
yep,
That's all I'm afraid of.
yeah.
Is down this, they'll come down Cedar Grove. Is there any caution we can do on even on our behalf? when we
Okay,
get
so-
to the CEO?
So let me put that same question to the CAO, because now the township is aware of the project taking place. And the township is aware of the routes that are proposed, so Mr. Grant, is there any way we can protect Cedar Grove Road here?
Through the chair, I'm sure that once we determine the timing of that closure, although it's overnight, which would be substantially less traffic. So, there's probably nothing to indicate that some signage can't be placed there with respect to local traffic calls.
And if my memory is good, it's 3 overnight closures, isn't it?
It's up to 3, I believe that the feeling is
Up to
that,
3, yes.
the work possibly could be completed in one overnight, session, but depending on, weather and other factors that they're sort of putting in contingency.
And I think the other thing we have to remember is that it's only County Road 2 traffic that's going to be diverted. Not, it's not going to be like Highway 401 traffic.
No, but we got,
Unless
yeah, we've got cruise rails, and we have giant tigers, so, you know,
Yes.
coming in and out.
Yeah. That's
So
correct.
there's gonna be lots of traffic. So bypass there.
Through the chair, Although once the day has been established, certainly we'll be looking to contact the industrial park users so that they're aware they can modify operations so that they're not. so
Yeah,
that
because
they're-
Cruise Rail will just turn and go west. And Giant Tiger will just turn and go east.
Or they may be able for that 8 to 10 hour window. Adjust operation.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. All right, and so now. So now I'm moving on then to item number 7. And the first item on 7A is an application for a zoning amendment at 2062 County Road 22 Marcus. And I see Mr. Tim Marcus is with us this evening. Welcome, Mr. Marcus, to the meeting. So it'll be a committee discussion here, and then there's an opportunity for questions if you have any at the end of the meeting. And because we try to keep these committee meetings a little bit more informal, if you signal to me that you would like a question, I'll try to get the permission of the table to entertain a question, but basically we try to keep this discussion at the table. Okay, so to the folks around the table, this briefing note appears on page 32 and 33 and 34. And goes beyond that as well. And so there is a recommendation on page 32. So chair's open for discussion here. Well put together briefing note from our community development coordinator. And I think we've got a good planning report from Novatech.
I'm happy to move the recommendation as it's written.
Okay, so I have a mover coming forward,
I'll second that.
and I have a seconder from Mr. Dillabon, Councillor Dillabon. Now, is there any further discussion with regard to this recommendation? If there's no further discussion, I'm about to call the question. Those in favor? Motion is carried. So that tells us that our staff and Mr. Marcus did an excellent job of putting a full package together, which left no questions, no unanswered questions in the minds of those around the table. So thank you very much. And so now I'm going to move to, here, I'm at item number 7B, which is an application for a zoning amendment at 1403 County Road 2, Mulder. And just see where I am here, get caught up with my paper. So we have again a report from Novatech, our planners. And we have a fair amount of work has been done on this project, I can see. 410 Planning and Design has submitted a report. Maybe Wendy, I might just, or excuse me, to the Community Development Coordinator, I might just ask you, if you would please, to just speak to these various reports. It does seem to have been a fairly complicated application for a zoning bylaw amendment. You would.
Certainly to the chair. So, this application, proposes to reduce the 30-meter water setback and also to build closer to the provincially significant wetlands, than what the setback would allow. We're also proposing to build a dock within the provincially significant wetlands. So, because of those wetlands, the applicant has submitted an environmental impact statement to show that it would be environmentally responsible to do that, and there's a safe building envelope there. The geotechnical investigation would be a requirement for the eventual building permit, so it makes sense to submit that in support of the application as well. And the applicant was provided a checklist for an archaeological assessment to determine I guess the screening for archaeological significance, and they had to prepare that assessment. So the reports there are quite large. I didn't include the full reports, but they're certainly available to anyone who would like to view them by contacting the township office. I've included the conclusions and recommendations for each of those reports in the package here. So what we're looking to do with this application at this time, we are still in the review stage, but we do have enough information to go ahead and schedule the public meeting date. Once we have the case management conference date set by the chair.
Okay, now. First of all, are there any questions? Okay, Councillor Cameron.
Yes, just through you, Mr. Mayor, to the coordinator. So the public meeting goes ahead, we get concerns or complaints, and they will be acted on.
Yes, absolutely. And the site plan provided here is a conceptual site plan, and the planning rationale and the information that's been provided as part of the application is it's all in the review stage right now, but it does, we do have enough information to go ahead and schedule a public meeting. And as we review, the applicant owner will be able to answer questions and we can provision throughout the process.
Thank you.
Okay, so is and I've lost my paperwork someplace along the way. Is there a recommendation to?
Yes.
Yeah, here I've got it now. It's on page 39.
111.
Yeah,
I'm happy to move that one as well, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mulder's been very diligent and very patient as this process has gone on, and whatever we can do to help speed him along, expedite this as quickly as possible. It's good.
okay, is there a seconder? Okay, Councillor Cameron seconding. Okay, now before I call the question on the recommendation. The only issue that I wanted to raise, and because I don't see it talked about in any of these reports. This is in a floodplain, and the floodplain elevation is shown on some of the drawings here. I'm just looking for the large scale map. And by the way, I very much appreciated the large scale map that was included here. And the floodplain elevation was shown someplace as 73.86. And there's nothing in the zoning bylaw amendment that I can see that specifically specifies the minimum height that the building has to be above the floodplain. And the reason I say that is that I'm located in the same section of the river. And when I was able to get my zoning bylaw amendment, it was clearly laid out that no building opening, i.e. door or window, shall be constructed below a minimum elevation of 76.9. So I'm seeing on this proposed dwelling elevations of 75, but I don't know whether those are elevations just at that point on the ground, or whether that's the elevation of the floor of the building. So do we have any discussion at all about the elevation of the floor of the building within the floodplain?
Through the chair, I believe the entire building is constructed outside of the floodplain.
Well, yeah, outside of the floodplain, but generally they specify a height. That's the only thing that I'm referring to. And I'll tell you why I'm asking. We know that up on the Ottawa River, the folks all had building permits, and the building permits all gave them authorization to build in those locations. But when they got flooded, they came back on the municipality saying words to the effect, well, you approved our permits. So it gets to be a situation where is the corporation at any risk here if we rely totally on all of these studies that we've got without addressing the specific issue of the floodplain? And don't get me wrong, I'm ready to support the recommendation here, provided that we deal with the floodplain issue. If you look at the if you look at the large scale map, on right near the bottom right-hand corner, you'll see that there's a notation there. The top of the water is at 73.86. But I didn't see a reference to what the floodplain elevation was.
Through the chair, I could get clarification on what the floodplain elevation is for that area. It's, the elevation isn't the same throughout the entire township, but I'm not sure what that exact elevation is for this area. The floodplain is mapped in our zoning bylaw and our official plan, and I see that they've added it to this, their site plan as well. They've also included some spot elevations, so you can see what the elevation is, near the house, and I can see that it's higher than where they have the boundary for the floodplain.
Yeah, the floodplain is shown with the blue dot, with the blue line, right? Says floodplain limit, 75.4 meters is the floodplain limit, the blue line with the dots in it.
Yes, through the chair, I read that the same way.
Yeah, and then what this application is asking for is relief from the 30-meter setback from the water setback, right?
They will need that relief from the zoning bylaw, correct?
Pardon?
Yes, they will need that relief from the zoning.
Yeah, because you can see the 30-meter water setback limit goes right through the center of the proposed dwelling. That's where they want the relief. Okay, well, as I said, I'm prepared to go along with the recommendation, but I am concerned as to what the liability of the municipality is with regard to the floodplain elevations. Is there a way that can be addressed when we finally get to well, first of all, we need to get to the public meeting, right?
Correct.
And then after the public meeting, we need to get to the actual wording of the bylaw. And what I'd like to do is propose, and I'll pass this over to staff. I would like to propose that when the bylaw comes forward, the bylaw really specifies minimum elevation of top of foundation, so that at least we have that protection on record when we pass the bylaw. It shouldn't affect anything. Okay, so if there's no other questions, I'm going to call the question on the recommendation. It's been duly moved and seconded by Deschamps and Cameron. About to call the question. Those in favor? Motion is carried. Okay. A minute to get reorganized. And that gets us to, I believe, an awful pile of work has been done on that application. All right, that gets us to municipal 2022 municipal election, the Joint Compliance Audit Committee appointments. And that is item number 7C. And there is a briefing note with the recommendation. We've already talked about it a little bit. This floor is open for discussion. Comments, if any. Discussion, if any. Hearing none. Anybody? Have a recommendation in front of us. Appointing a new audit committee. Chairs, yeah, chairs. Okay, so Councillor Dillabaugh, you're moving?
Yeah.
And Councillor Cameron, you're seconding?
That is correct.
Okay. Further discussion, if any? If not, I'm going to call the question. Those in favor? Motion is carried. And we'll think. Here we go. So now I'm at item number 7D, which is the Food Cycler Pilot Program Update, starting on page 82 of 111. So it looks like a successful program. Mr. CAO, did you want to speak to it, or does somebody want to speak to this?
Mr. Chair, I'll have the treasurer speak to that, because she's certainly been in the lead through this project. And point her to review the results.
Yeah, through the chair, I actually sat through the presentation that's attached to the information item with a couple of representatives from food clients. So they went through that whole PowerPoint, which I've attached to the action item, or the information item. I just kind of summarized some of the points, where, that highlighted the success of the program. We had the majority of people respond to the survey, which is what their due diligence was as part of the subsidy. We've had lots of people even contacting since, wanting to know, are we going to run another pilot? What's the next steps in this process? And as it states in the information item, due to an incoming council, I think what we should do is just discuss the merits of the program itself and make some points that will bring back to the incoming council to make a decision. I think for 2023, we have an option of doing another pilot. One of the major concerns, I think, it was dependent, I guess, on the number of people within the household, was the size of the unit. Food cycle science does have a larger unit that's available, which we could, do a blend of a smaller unit and a larger unit, dependent on the number of people in the household. It's a slightly more expensive, but not onerously expensive. The other option is to do an additional bucket. So you would have two buckets to swipe and exchange, so that you still have that double capacity without having to buy a larger unit, which would be more expensive than just having the two buckets. But they could roll out a full comprehensive plan. Some smaller municipalities have done that, where they have, bought a large sum of the units and then sold them subsidized as well, as opposed to doing the pilot. So certainly lots of options. I think one of the things we're thinking is maybe we do another pilot. Staff, we think maybe a bit more data just to see if we could, and maybe we start trying to not necessarily choose families, but try to get a better kind of cross section of the residents, so we have an understanding of whether the unit works in multiple situations.
Okay, so that's, thank you very much for your summary there. So chair's open here now, Counselor now.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would just like to echo what Madam Treasurer said. As a user of this item, I find it extremely versatile and extremely good. Now, I do, for the size of our household, which is 2 people, the one bucket for the most part is plenty. I do a mix once a week, and then that keeps me going. There are the odd occasions when I use a second bucket, which I had on hand from actually I bought it from Lee Valley, and it's an insulated, not an insulated unit, but it has filters, so you can store some things right in it in your kitchen, and then when it reaches a point, I just take it downstairs and put it into the machine, and it seemed to work all right for me. So I would just concur with what Madam Treasurer has to say in her notes here, that I would certainly like to see another offering put out somewhere down the road, because to me it works extremely well.
Okay, other speakers?
Just on that note, if I can ask Councilor Cameron a question for his, we didn't get our recycler, and his parents use one and they love it as well, but I've never asked this question. You noticed how much it reduces for your weekly bag or your monthly bag, whatever?
No, because, and I'll tell you why, being a small household, we never would go over one bag anyway. So, I mean, it would be the once a year, perhaps, maybe Christmas or New Year's, or when we had family over for a big gathering, that it might stretch the limit. But no, as far as the amount of bag usage, for a large family, I would say there is going to be a reduction, but for my situation, no. There wasn't.
I'll go back to that, Mr. Mayor, to the deputy mayor, that we have sometimes 5 in our family for the for the week. And yes, it does now, save you quite, I'm gonna save like 20% of my garbage. Less, but I'm finding that it's, as, Madam Treasurer said, in the summertime, it's too small. I have too much of a bag and then sometimes I forget. And I got one in there and half my other bags outside, and then I got fruit flies. that I'll get 2 days later.
Yeah.
That was my only problem. If I had it, a bigger unit where I could put that whole bag in at once, I would love it. But now I'll get back to it in the winter. I did cheat July, August. I didn't because I could throw it in my garden anyways, you know, so I wasn't concerned. But I will, that's why I had an awful mess a couple times. But let's say,
Just a question to our two councils of you. Council Gilbert, do you use it every day?
yeah, no, not every day. Every week. 'Cause I had enough, and that's the trouble. I had too much. I should have used it maybe twice a week.
That's, I have one friend, from, got one. They think it's wonderful. Become green recyclers, per se, with it. And they had 2 or 3 comments. One, it could be bigger when they have a big group there.
Yeah.
But they have no trouble with it because they do it every day.
Okay,
They throw it in, turn it on at night and dump it out. Second comment was they like it because they're avid gardeners and they take it out and they say clean straight, great fertilizer on the garden. Third comment, they had, as much as they liked it, they said if they had to pay the $450 to buy it, they thought there'd be darn few people ever buy it. Because there isn't $450 advantage of $150. Great, try it out, I would try it, but if there wasn't being subsidized on it, they said they very much doubt and they could well afford to buy it. They said they would never spend $450 on it. So it's a lot.
Okay, but can we just go back for a second? Our subsidy was 150, wasn't it, per unit?
Yeah, each participant had to pay $150.
Or each participant paid 150. So did we pay the remaining 200?
We paid 100, so the original cost was $500. Impact Canada paid $250. And then the township was billed $250. We subsidized each unit by 100 and we sold them for 100.
Oh, yes, okay, that's what I forgot. Yes. Thanks very much. So the big impact was the first 250 by Impact Canada. One back in?
Yes, yes, I did. And to follow up with Councillor Hunter's comments, that, as I've said before, I do my cycle once a week. However, if I didn't have the second bucket, I would probably do it twice a week.
What is the cycle time then once you turn?
6 hours.
Oh, 6 hours, so overnight.
it's a day. I do
Well-
mine in the morning, when I come home, it's done.
They do it, they throw theirs in before, when they get done supper, they throw everything in, turn it on, get up in the morning, take it out, throw it in the garden.
So I have mine in the garage, I probably had it, I was, you know, different. I probably would do the same.
Now, one other, excuse me.
Go ahead.
Just one other thing, what I do is, I won't mention any brand names, but large coffee tins that are about that big around, about this high. What I do is, after I run the cycle and it becomes, whatever, it's the residue in the bottom, I just dump it in the coffee can. And it takes about 6 months to fill that coffee.
Oh, my goodness.
Because you just have a little handful of stuff when you're
Oh,
finished.
okay, just mix it up when you're making
Yeah.
morning coffee. If I may, on sort of an overall note, I love the idea when Amy brought it to us, way back when, I think she was University of Burnaby, for a green recycling program for rural areas, not really having anything other than our own backyard composters or worms or whatever. I think this gives us, in an area like this, the ability to affordably compost and get that out of keep it out of our landfills. And when it's probably too expensive to do a pickup, of green recycle, this at least gives people an affordable option to get started, and I'd hate to see us not stay involved. So if the opportunity for us to stay involved is there, from my standpoint, I'd love to stay involved with this program, so.
And so just to pick up, you did say that there, you thought there would be an opportunity for a second pilot program.
Right, there is, and just as a point, we will need to, council would need to make a decision to be able to start that pilot or give them the nod early January. So, a report is gonna have to come back to the incoming council to make a decision in December so that we can signal to food cycle that we're on board for another pilot, whatever that amount is, whether it's, another 100 participants or more. And maybe even look at that, a little bit of the smaller units, and the larger units were going to be $400 for us to buy. I don't know what they would subsidize, but it would be like almost $300 or $400 instead of the $250. So we would have to either decide, who's doing $100 per unit. The larger unit would be the difference in that, right? As opposed to the.
So I think one thing we have to be aware of is the comment that somebody made that at 150 that was attractive, but at 450 it wouldn't be.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, and that's sort of where I was going with this. So from Innovation Canada, is it going to be a similar amount that they're going to make available? Would it be 150 per unit or 250 per unit, or
I guess it would depend on the size of the unit. So
we'll get that information, or whoever get that information.
Okay,
One question more, if you could, on that, Mr. Ware.
say again?
One more question on it, just for, I'm gonna be sitting around here, but whoever is sitting around here for the next council in January, I don't think we ever had it really answered on the first time we did it. If the council decides to buy, this time we bought 100, we sold 100 right out. If the future council decided they were gonna buy 200 of them when they're being subsidized at 250, do they have to sell them all out right then to still buy them at that, or if they have 50 left over, can they just keep them and just sell them over the rest of the time they own them? Can they automatically get them for 250 that they can set them there and sell them out at a later date?
Through the chair, if we were to choose to do 200 units, we would pay for 200 units, and whatever we sold, we would sell, and then we would have to take them. We would just have to make sure that we would have the money. So
Yeah, but they could buy more than they actually anticipated and have them for the next 2 or 3 years to sell it.
Am I wrong in thinking that Amy said that we could buy a bigger amount and we could return the ones that we didn't actually sell?
we could, yes.
Yeah, or keep them and have some if people want them.
Yeah, but I think that just to Councillor Hunter's question was, is Impact Canada, which is providing the initial subsidy, expecting that if we buy 200, there'll be 200 participants in the pilot project? In other words, if we buy 200 and they're anticipating 200 participants in the pilot project, will they be satisfied with 150 participants and we hold the other 50 units? I think that was the gist of his question.
Yeah, but I think through saying we could return the other 50 we didn't sell, and then our pilot would only be 150.
Do we have the other option?
Possibly.
I think that was the gist of the question. Yeah, okay, well, good discussion, and I think we all understand that this will have to be on an early item on the next on the agenda for the next council. So you have the briefing note to present to them as well, and I hope you'll present that briefing note in this same format, along with the notes that the clerk has taken, because I think the issue of price is a big thing, and then the issue of whether there be an Impact Canada grant, upfront grant, that's another big thing. So good discussion. Does anybody want one final word before I move on to the next item? Okay, I'm about to move on, and so that gets me to number 7E, which is the cash receipt handling procedures. And I think if I recall correctly, this is information item. And I didn't see a recommendation, at least don't think I saw a recommendation coming from it. Just, again, we'll go back to the treasurer and have the treasurer just sort of bring this in some perspective, if you would, please.
Certainly, through the chair, this is a similar procedure to what we had brought forward when we did our accounts payable procedure. It's just outlining, it's an internal document to outline the controls that are in place within this function of the finance department. And it's kind of in response to the auditors have indicated that they would like stronger controls or have identified the cash receipts as being something that we need to look into in mitigating risk. So I did some best practice and looked at some cash handling procedures in different municipalities in order to draft something. And what this is really just trying to kind of put into words what happens within the organization currently, just to kind of give the auditors a better sense of what's happening and the controls that are in place currently. So there's not a whole lot going to be changed in what happens. That it happens the way it is right now. The one thing that I've incorporated in this particular procedure is there's other departments that also handle cash, mainly the rec department. So I reached out to the manager of recreation, and he and I have worked out a policy around how they handle their cash within their department. So it's just a guiding document to make sure that everybody's aware of the risk of cash. Having said that, since the pandemic, cash is less of an issue. For sure, and so it's not a big of a deal, but we definitely have to have a procedure that aligns those controls.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, floor is open for discussion here. Councillor Hunter?
Cash is. It's getting me like myself, it's getting their data.
I wouldn't touch that line with a 10-foot pole.
Everybody uses debit cards and Visa pretty near now. The one thing I have brought to me, and I don't know whether our facility manager changed it or not, and been out to canteen for quite a while. But a lot of the canteens in Ottawa now all have debit machines, because most of the kids don't carry cash. Play hockey and stuff to carry a debit card. But it's pretty near a secure thing, no cash handling. Clerks have, I know one of the ones that is operated by the Alliance, and they switched to that because they have all kinds of parents handling money, and there's no way you could really track whether somebody put $10 in their pocket or not. But they do all debit. That's the way you pay. It's debit. So everything, cash flow is always there. At the night, it automatically balances your debit. I use a shanty on a little box thing, a square, but I use, but it's balanced every night for you. It tells you what your average sale was, when they were, the time they were, and everything else. So
Easy.
I think it were the procedure really to enhance sales too, because sometimes kids come and have. I know we put ATM machines in, but other people don't use an ATM machine to charge $3.50 if you want a $5 drink. So I think it would be a good procedure.
So have we discussed the concept that Councillor Hunter is putting forward, and just before he does that mean that I can't get my $2 hot dog with my $2 bill?
Through the chair, we already have the machine in all of our canteens. We also have wireless one for at the pools and camps. There's still cash accepted at all the canteens, but we instituted the debit machines in all those locations as a way of, just like you said, increasing sales, but limiting the risk of cash.
Councillor Town.
Yes, just to pick up on your statement, Madam Treasurer. I tried to use a debit card at the waterfront canteen and was refused.
Probably a wireless thing. When it's a wireless machine, sometimes they connect to.
Well, no, he just told me he doesn't take that. Period.
At the Legion canteen.
Yeah.
Because they understand the wireless. we never
Use it all the time.
had all the canteens.
I was told, that, it was cash only.
Well, yeah, so through all, we can follow up, but it may just have been somebody, filling in for a particular shift and was not familiar with that. That particular part,
that-
because
that's
I
quite
think that, my understanding as well is that unit is available, so I'm just wondering, once, if we had a last minute, fill in at the canteen, it was like cash only, that I can.
I'll just leave it at that.
Mr. Mayor, let's go ahead.
Just, so the reason for the draft is to get us in, fulfill what MMP's recommendation was when it came to terms of how we handle cash, correct? Yeah, so, I don't see any issue with the draft as it's written. Everything that I read through seems to fulfill what they were looking for in the audit, so looks good to me.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, well, there is no recommendation here, but I would suggest to the committee that because this did originate in the management letter, that for the protection of, well, not necessarily the protection of staff, but just for the so that staff has concrete evidence that this was presented to the committee. I would think that it would be in order for us to pass a motion that we received and reviewed this report. And then that they have that to show the auditor, look, we reported that you asked us to do this in the management letter, and we prepared this report for the governing body, and we presented it to this committee on this date. So I'd be quite willing as a chair to entertain a motion that this report was received and discussed. Okay, so I'll have Councillor Hunter moving that the report was received and discussed. Does he have a second? Yes. Councillor Cameron, and then can I depend on the clerk to just wordsmith the motion for me? So just the essence of it would be received and discussed. And so I'm going to call the question on the motion before the chair. Those in favor?
Aye.
Motion is carried. Okay, and so now I'm moving on. And the next item on the agenda is repeal item number 7F, which is repeal and replace bylaw 2022-49, which is the Ontario infrastructure borrowing bylaw. And so we see the essence of the issue here is sort of combined in the recommendation, which appears on page 111 of 111. So the chair is open for discussion here, but maybe what I should do is allow the treasurer to just introduce the issue here. Do it, please.
Certainly. So, through the chair, when we passed the original bylaw, it was forwarded on to the Ontario Loans Company. And they reviewed the bylaw, and they provided a template, a borrowing template. And their biggest concern was the fact that we had included a phrase or a clause in it with respect to long-term borrowing. And that was purposely done by myself and the clerk, because we got the impression that at the time, council didn't really want to entertain a long-term borrowing option with Infrastructure Ontario. So, but in retrospect, in their explanation is they need to have it there on the offset that potentially we do need to borrow. They need the clause in there to give us that ability to. It doesn't mean that we're obligated to, but it allows us not to have to do another bylaw if in the circumstance we choose after the 120 days that we want to borrow from them. We find that their interest rates, the better interest rate, we would need to have that clause, offering clause in bylaw.
Now, when I discussed this at the agenda review meeting with the CAO, I sort of took the impression that basically they're looking at it as a sort of a guarantee that they will get their construction financing money back. So on the date that we reach substantial completion, we know what our costs are. And then the way the CAO explained it to me was that we have from that date 120 days to put other financing in place. And if we don't put other long-term financing in place, it automatically kicks into a long-term financing with Infrastructure Ontario. So in essence, they're guaranteed by our bylaw, they're guaranteed repayment if we don't act within that 120-day window. And there may be other places which are better terms and shorter periods, etc.
Yeah.
So the only question that I have you constructed the additional clause that will go into the new bylaw?
The clerk is in the process of doing that. We're actually looking at the entire bylaw because they provided us with a template and they want us to be a little more congruent with their template.
Okay, so does this, the essence of the recommendation is the committee recommends that council repeal bylaw 2022-49 and replace it to include a section in the bylaw pertaining to long-term borrowing. So that's sort of generic in nature. So are there any questions arising from the briefing? Councillor Dillabaugh.
Yeah, I just want to make sure, so we don't have to go long-term with Infrastructure Ontario. We have 120 days to get our finances, if we maybe take them in reserves or whatever.
Yeah.
We don't have to go with, okay, long-term. Here, I'm good.
Any other questions? Councillor Hunter.
I know we can repeal this bylaw, the council is a lame duck council, they have the authority to implement a new bylaw. Okay.
Okay, and you're confident of that? Okay. All right, does that answer any questions?
Thank you.
Any additional questions? Chair's looking for a mover and a seconder to action the recommendation.
I'll move it, Mr. Oh, go ahead, Mr. Cameron, you haven't moved nothing for the last 3 months, so go ahead.
I'll second.
Oh, you got a second? Sure.
Okay, I have Councillor Dillabaugh moving. We do. Councillor Dillabaugh moving, Councillor Cameron seconding. If there's no further discussion, I'm about to call the question. Those in favor? Motion is carried. Thank you. Okay, so that gets us to the end of our action and information items, number 7. So now I'm moving to item number 8 on the agenda, which is council inquiries and notices of motion. Does anyone have anything to bring forward here? Mr. Mayor? Yes, go ahead.
Yes, through you to the CAO. Mr. CAO, I'm just curious as to what is happening with the old grocery store on Dundas Street. We're quickly approaching the inclement weather period. Will we have a sidewalk back by snowfall, or can we get some information regarding that?
Through the chair, we are certainly aiming to have a sidewalk there for the winter season.
Thank you.
Any other inquiries or notices of motion before I move on? Go ahead.
Just like to give a big shout out to the Spencerville Fair Committee for all their volunteers and the work they did over the year. They, I think, is very, very successful. The weather helped, and the more volunteers we have, the better the fair will be. So I have to tip my hat to all the people, from the president to the people who were selling tickets to get us a job well done.
Thank you very much. Any other? Councillor Hunter.
Having wasted 2/3 of the day at school construction, I guess you want to call it, plowing match on Sunday. I see our park managers give us a list of hours we're expected to work for the park. Cardin LaBeouf, are we gonna get a list made up for the township Cardin LaBeouf who's working and times and stuff to be there for it?
Through the chair, yes, we have, we have that list. And we can distribute that, but it's sort of the feeling is that those that are working in one, they're side by side, so.
We have numbers, I think.
Yeah, we certainly,
Good
certainly are covered.
Or a couple of each sites that one is talking to somebody that does it free to. And what about the setup? For it? Setup will be on Monday or
We'll be
late
on,
Saturday, so.
we'll be on, yes, on Monday, the community development coordinator will be there Monday, to do the setup. So very similar to the display that's at the.
If you need any help, I'm there all week anyway, so it should be self like.
Through the chair, certainly, we will touch base
Okay.
with respect to timing and any help would be appreciated.
But we carry on the same issue, have plowing match distributed the parking passes and entry passes to the,
Through the chair, we just submitted to the county on Friday for the number of passes. So we haven't received those as of yet, but
it was red passes or just green passes for the parking. Should get one red pass anyway.
I believe it's green pass.
Green passes.
I believe.
Carry on just for instruction for everybody here, but I gotta feel like I got something out of 6 hours of time back there. The lodge will be doing the parking. And for those who haven't been back and seen the setup, but if you have a red pass, which I think Port's getting some for the port side, you went off the Dell Road and that parking lot there is the red parking lot. And it comes
On the east side of 44 or west side?
on the west side of 44, you turn up the Dell Road.
Dell Road.
Just to come over the bridge.
Oh, yeah.
Pass, turn up there, park is there, according to the map, the Legion Granville tent and stuff is right in the front of that. You go through them, and I don't know where ours is, we're not in Legion Granville, I don't think, we're in ourselves. We are, but, that's red passes there, if we have green passes. When you go on up and right across almost from gate going in, you turn in, there'll be large ones there, and the police likely directing you in. But when you come in the first stop, you can go to your right into green, or on the left side is green, but it's also a handicap parking. So if you have somebody with you that's handicapped, you go in that side, and they have there's 2 handicap wagons that have ramps that can take scooters up onto, and there's 2 other ones that just have a cane or something. They're hydraulic lift and they drop right down to about 5 inches off the ground. So you just step into them. So if you have somebody with you that's going that's handicapped or just hard, ask to go to the left. Just tell the lodge guy there, I need handicap. We're going to try to sort, because we're trying to have 2 lanes coming in to empty off 44 as quick as we can. If you're handicapped, when you turn in, try to get over in the left lane if you can, because that's the side of the handicaps. On the right side, on the other side, just if you can get over there, it saves whichever one of us up there. If you want handicap, we're going to have to stop the flow, and the whole thing is to try to keep cars moving steady, because we know there's going to be a backlog coming in. So it's easier.
And that's the difference between the red pass and the green pass.
Yeah, the red pass is getting right outside the door. You don't need a wagon to get in, you just walk in. The green passes, you're gonna have to take a wagon in, because when you get in the regular parking, if you haven't got a green pass, you've got 25-minute ride on a wagon. Way off. You can't even see the biggest parking lot back in the KCAP building. It's way back in the big back, 30-acre field in the back, and then there's the other ones off, way off to the side. Well, it's over where the prison's going to be built, so it's a long ride there. And if you get there late, if you go into the overflow parking is on the other side of the Dell Hill. Other fields there, Eastern Breeders' Field, so.
Okay, so these passes will come probably sometime this week or early next week then. We'll be back here on Monday night.
They said everything's falling in place by Sunday, so.
Okay. Any other inquiries or notices of motion or information? Okay. Okay, so I'm gonna go now then to item number 9, which is the mayor's report. And the very first thing I'm gonna do is ask Mr. Grant, the CAO, to tell us about this illumination initiative, which came, I guess, from the province today as a means of recognizing the Queen's passing. Would Mr. Grant?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, it came in over the weekend from the Ontario Office of International Relations and Protocol with respect to an illumination initiative to mourn the passing of Her Majesty. And really, it's looking at illuminating buildings like the municipal office in blue. To sort of mimic the color of blue that's found in the viceregal flags of Canada, and also the royal blue hue, also mimicking the jewels worn by Her Majesty in her final official Canadian portrait. So we should be able logistically to have the municipal building illuminated in the evening and in blue for the coming week.
Be the coming week then? Yeah. Okay, any questions there? Okay, hearing no questions there, about to move on. Just a point of information. At the AMO conference, I did speak to a company, and I can't even remember the name of the company right now, but he keeps after me. And they have a road survey software program that he actually did quite an impressive demonstration at the AMO conference. Prescott already purchases the program, and I think it might be of some value to us. And he's been after me to try to arrange a presentation. So I'm trying to get something organized with Councillor Cameron's permission to add to the agenda at the Public Works meeting, but I don't know whether it'll come together or not. Next item, just quickly, this is the 21-22 Ombudsman report, which just appeared last week, September the 8th. And I've scooped up one copy for myself. It's very interesting to read the section on municipalities. And the one thing that I wanted to bring forward, and my apologies again to the clerk, that I haven't brought you the article, and I don't know whether you may have seen it out of the Recorder and Times, where the town of Brockville, the city of Brockville, actually fell afoul of the ombudsman for the manner in which they go into closed sessions. And in one of their motions to go into closed session, they said that the reason they go into closed session were personal matters and potential or possible litigation. And so they went into the closed session. They were accused of breaching the protocols, and the ombudsman reviewed it. And the ombudsman said, yes, you did breach it because your motion said it was for personal matters, which were discussed. But there was no discussion of any possible or future litigation. And so you had no business, including that as a reason to go into the closed session. So just a small thing, but it tells you how picky they can be when you get accused of these things. So I just bring that up because there's a lot of other examples in here that members of council might find interesting. The next item that I had on my list was the grocery store in Cardinal, which Councillor Cameron has already brought up, and we'll wait for an answer on that. And just so everybody knows, I've been discussing this item with the CAO on quite a frequent basis. And one of the things that I've asked for, and I'm not so sure that our chief building official has the teeth that may have to be used here. to get this done. And one of the things that I've asked the CAO to do is to arrange a meeting with our lawyer, because I'd like to know what our legal avenues are over and above any powers that the chief building official may have. So I'm just leaving that as a hanging note right now. And then the last item on my agenda, of course, is extending thanks to and best wishes and congratulations to the 167th Spencerville Fair. I think they surpassed their objectives. And certainly I know from talking to several members that were involved on the board of directors, they made a deliberate effort this year to try to curtail their expenditures, because prior to the pandemic, they had been caught with about 2 years of bad weather. And so they didn't really want to take any chances coming out of the pandemic of running into a situation with bad weather. So they kept their expenses quite reduced. And I think, as we all saw, they had great weather, and I'm sure that they did well. So that's the end of the mayor's report. And moving to item number 10, question period. Mr. Marcus has left us. There's nobody on Zoom. Item number 11 is a closed session. We have none this evening. And so I'm at item number 12, looking for the motion to adjourn. Okay, I have Deputy Mayor Deschamps moving the motion to adjourn the meeting. Does he have a second? Councilor Dillabaugh seconding. And I'm going to call the question. Those in favor?
Don't really want to do it first.
Carried. Motion's carried.